he said to me, Mom, I got this call for a meeting, not an interview, a meeting for this company called Goldman Sachs. And I'm like, and he's like, I'm not quite sure who they are. And I'm like, well, I think you really need to do your homework. It's a really big company. And he had said to me, and this is all via text, mind you.
Got it.
That, and I don't know how they found him, but they said to him, you're the only Chapman student we are meeting with.
Wow. So Goldman Sachs reached out to Chapman.
Correct. And they probably just said, give me one of your top finance kids or something. I don't know, because I don't know.
Okay. But he's got a meeting with Goldman Sachs.
I had the meeting the other day.
Welcome to the College Help Squad podcast. I'm your host, college planning educator, breast cancer survivor, and co-owner of College Help Squad, Cynthia Wagner. I will share what students and parents need to know about getting into college. Whether you're in high school or you're a transfer student or a parent of a student, we are going to talk about the process, essays, financial aid, anxieties, the excitement, the relief, the stress of getting in, and everything in between. Happy to introduce Becky. She's my friend, but she also had her student go through our program. And I love hearing student-parent experiences and sharing them with you because we're all going to have those, my gosh, moments where these things we can identify with or go, that happened to me. And I see that a lot on our social media. So I wanted to bring her on board. So welcome, Becky.
Thank you for having me.
So nice.
I'm really excited to be here.
And we became friends, I think, because of this process. She came to one of my webinars and we started talking. And a couple years later, she came back saying, okay, I need help. So we're going to talk about her youngest because you have two boys. Why don't you share a little bit about your family?
Okay. Yes, I have two boys. And Andrew went to Arizona State and he was on the 5-year plan, but he was also a COVID kid. So he finally graduated. He's in Dallas now, working in sales. And John, who you helped, is a senior at Chapman, but he is actually starting his first semester of senior year because he took a gap semester.
So yeah, let's talk about that first. So he got accepted for fall, but then he asked for a deferral, or did they give him that deferral? How did that work out?
You know, it was really interesting. I mean, John, being also a COVID kid, when he was looking at schools, he was really not sure. He wasn't sure if he just wanted to go to a regular school or play football. Remember all that? He was really struggling. And so when he finally decided to apply to Chapman, it was kind of too late.
That's right.
But he was a good student. He had a very good resume. So they took him right away, even though it was after the deadline. Remember that?
Yeah.
And they said, but unfortunately, we're full for the fall, but you're welcome to come in the spring.
Okay. So it wasn't a deferral. We basically did an application for spring.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a while because it's almost been 4 years.
It was really an interesting transition because, all his friends are scooting off to college in the fall. And he was like, wait a second. Oh, yeah, I don't start till January. But, he figured it out. He got it, he worked. And, it's just kind of been an interesting process being one semester behind, but it's not the end of the world if that happens to someone.
Yeah, I think a lot in the public schools, and I know Chapman isn't, because once he got in, he's going through 4 years and he'll be out. And we'll talk about that in a minute, right? But if you're in a state school like a UC or a Cal State, because sometimes they're impacted, you might end up being there 5 years anyway. So traditionally, he's probably still right on target, right on track. And I know he's doing well. He's doing amazingly well because he gets a fantastic scholarship, right? And that's for GPA.
Correct.
So it's merit. So I'm super proud of him. And I know you are too.
Thank you.
He's doing a good job. And he has a job outside. He works at the White House, if anyone wants to know. Not the one in DC, but the one in Anaheim. It's really good. It's a great restaurant owned by Bruno Serrata.
I forgot his last name, but he does amazing charity work. I mean, he's famous.
Yeah.
You can find his face at Smart and Final.
Yeah. So if you're ever looking for a great place to dine, the White House, it's in Anaheim. And you can find John.
Yes. And he actually got that job through his fraternity, Pike, because Bruno is a big supporter of that fraternity. So it was kind of, all these college kids, looking for jobs. It's always great to join some kind of organization because there's usually someone in the organization that has a connection to a business.
Yeah. Now, was the White House Are they an alumni of Pike?
I don't know that. I'm sure Bruno is because for whatever reason, he's a huge supporter of Pike.
Okay. All right. So talking about Pike, what was John's agenda going to Chapman and why did he choose Chapman?
Well, one of the reasons he chose Chapman was he wanted to play college football. Now, Chapman is D3. It's not D1. It's not D2. So you cannot get scholarships, as you know, when you play D3, but you can get academic scholarships. Anyways, moving forward, he wanted to play football. So he tried it for a semester and it didn't work out, which was great for him, I think, because it kind of like he still was able to play for a little bit, but then realized he was kind of done with that. And so he was able to get it out of his system.
Okay.
And then he just went back to being a normal student.
A normal student. So then fraternity. So sometimes there's a checklist of needs and wants for kids when they're applying to college. John doesn't strike me as a fraternity boy. So how did that come to be?
Well, John, man of few words, he did not say a thing until he started rushing because he couldn't get out of it. Because when he was rushing, he had to do all these crazy things to rush for the, fraternity. Like he had to go and clean all these seniors' houses. And he'd be like charging all these cleaning supplies on my credit card. And I'm like, what are you doing? Are you starting a cleaning service? And he's like, well, no, it's part of the process. And I'm like, okay, all right. And then, he comes to find out, he joined Pike.
Okay.
But I was like really not aware of anything that was happening.
Did you feel that having that connection and finding his tribe really helped him get through the rest of the process?
Absolutely. He was really just not in a good place when he first got to Chapman because number one, everybody else was already a semester in. So he was kind of the new kid on the block. He tried to connect with the football team and he struggled. And I don't know if it's maybe because he joined late. I don't know, but he really struggled. He struggled with the coaches, because he was a walk-on.
Right. But he did try out to walk on, or was he offered a walk on without trying out? Just curious.
I think they basically must have saw his films and told him he could walk on.
Okay.
And I could be wrong because I don't remember any special meetings.
And I don't remember him trying out.
No.
Yeah.
So he walked on and he really struggled with finding that connection. And plus, when you play a college sport, kids need to realize it's a full-time job. You do not have time to really be social. You don't have time for anything. So that makes it extra hard to find your tribe, right?
Yeah.
Especially if your tribe isn't the team. But I always think it's really good for kids to try it and they might love it, Our older son, Andrew, he went to Whittier College for 1 year. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that.
Now, they actually came to him and said, we would love you to play football for us. Yeah. And he's like, great. And he did really well. And he was really good friends with everyone on the team. And I don't think he would have stayed. It's like the opposite. He wouldn't have stayed at Whittier if it wasn't for the football. But then COVID happened. All the kids came home. I think Whittier was the first school in the country to shut down.
Yeah. And they closed their football program. They just brought it back this year.
I know. So, Andrew was home for a long time and said, you know what, I really just want to go to like a big, big school. And so that's when he transferred to ASU. And ASU, I think, is one of those schools, correct me if I'm wrong, where you can actually just apply. You don't have to have so many credits under your belt.
Well, he applied as a transfer. So you can apply as a transfer as a sophomore or a junior, depending on how many credits you have.
He was a sophomore. Yeah. So, so he ended up, whereas John ended up staying and not playing football, Andrew ended up not playing football and leaving. It was just, it's kind of interesting to see the two different paths.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They're a football family, by the way. That's not true. You were a part of the football boosters and you did all you could to help and have parties at your house and everything else. My daughter was a cheerleader, so I got to see it from an ancillary side.
I just don't know the positions. I know quarterback. I know quarterback. I got that one. And the punter.
I think because the cheerleaders have to know kind of what's going on. Paige learned all of the positions when we're watching college football. She'll be like, oh, this, running back or this
tight end.
Yeah. And I'm like, huh? I'm like, I just want to put $5 on this, on the square. But anyway, so fascinating. And both boys are really, I think, in a good place. I think John has his tribe. I understand he's graduating. So you're saying he's graduating in December because he started a semester late.
Correct.
But his fraternity boys are graduating in the spring. And so he wants to walk with them.
Correct.
Yeah. So he needs to get on that with Chapman and get in line.
Yes, I didn't even know that was an option. I knew it was an option if you graduate in August. You still have some summer school left.
Yeah.
But I didn't know it was an option at colleges to be able to walk a whole semester early.
Well, I think it's because Chapman they don't have a commencement ceremony in December. So that's what I read, was that you could walk.
Do some colleges have
Yes.
a ceremony in December?
Yes.
The bigger schools.
Yeah. They have their smaller, department graduations.
Right.
Yeah. So he needs to get on that. But if he needs help, let's help him, right? You're welcome. Of course. So I want to go back to high school. So we're working backwards now. Brilliant kid, ready to go. We'll see what he does. Wait, let's talk about the Chapman conversation, and then we'll go to high school. So share with me who reached out to Chapman, and then they reached out to John.
Oh my gosh, I have to go way back.
This was the call last week, Goldman Sachs.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I thought you were talking about back in high school.
No. I said, before we get to high school, I forgot. Let's bring up what happened, because this kiddo's ready to go and has really done a good job of setting himself up for success. So let's talk about that conversation. And then we'll go back to high school.
Okay. So he called me last week. He's so funny. And he said to me, Mom, I got this call for a meeting, not an interview, a meeting for this company called Goldman Sachs. And I'm like, and he's like, I'm not quite sure who they are. And I'm like, well, I think you really need to do your homework. It's a really big company. And he had said to me, and this is all via text, mind you.
Got it.
And I don't know how they found him, but they said to him, you're the only Chapman student we are meeting with.
Wow. So Goldman Sachs reached out to Chapman.
Correct. And they probably just said, give me one of your top finance kids or something. I don't know, because I don't know.
Okay. But he's got a meeting with Goldman Sachs.
I had the meeting the other day.
Okay.
I do not know how it went. I tried to call him and he's like, I'm busy. I can't talk. And what I did tell him is, and I think all kids should know this, a meeting is an interview, whether you think so or not, and dress the part.
Exactly.
He's like,
love that advice.
He's like, it's just a meeting. I'm like, no. It is not just a meeting. It's an interview.
Yes.
And I said, wear a suit.
Boom. Love it.
Yes.
Okay, good.
So I will have to keep you posted on that.
Great advice. I love it. Do you have questions about the college process? Maybe about getting into college, the path, cost of college, the transfer journey? Or are you a student that's on an IEP or has a 504? Not a problem. College Help Squad offers free webinars. Join us. Check out collegehelpsquad.com/seminars and register for one of our free webinars. So let's go back to 2021. Because John graduated the same time my daughter graduated in 2022. Can you believe it? So
I can't. I cannot believe it.
So John was applying to all of these different schools. And I want to go through this story because for me, it's so important. And John brings so much to the table. I wish he was here also. But we were going through his schools and we kept saying, check your portals. Are you checking your portals? And he's like, yeah, I'm checking my portals. He wasn't checking his portals.
So we're starting to just kind of wrap things up. And, soon senior year is so hard. There's so much going on. There's so much information back and forth with the schools, the parents, the kids, the counselors at the school, you guys. It is just like a whirlwind. And can I just say one thing? Senior year should be fun, but it's so stressful. And I get this from parents all the time. They're like, this is so much. And it makes me sad because this is their last year. Technically, they're going to have time with their child, but there's just like a whirlwind of stuff, right? Every day. Anyways, so we're kind of wrapping things up. He applied to a lot of different schools. He was waitlisted for, I'm sure, a handful, but I remember two in particular, Santa Barbara and UC San Diego. And he was really interested in both, but neither one has a football team. that was kind of, he was kind of back and forth, but it didn't matter. He was waitlisted. So now he graduates and I think end July rolls around.
No, it was June.
June?
Carrie asked, have you checked your portals? Because you were waitlisted and we put in letters of intent. So I believe Santa Barbara didn't happen.
It did.
Oh, he got into Santa Barbara also?
He got into Santa Barbara as well. And John being John, he was in summer mode and he was not checking his portals. And he came to me, I'll never forget it. It was like one afternoon at like 2:00. And he's like, Mom, I did get into those schools, but now I didn't because I missed it. I missed the window.
The deadline.
Because it's really important because it's literally like accepting an offer. You have so much time to accept. And if you don't accept, it expired.
Right. So Santa Barbara said, no, thank you, not going to happen. UC San Diego, though, however, we reached out. John's dad reached out and we got them to say yes. That was crazy. So my biggest takeaway in that was you got to check your portals, even on waitlist, because you don't know what's going to happen. It was so scary because all of this was happening and anxiety and all of this could have just been curtailed and not happened if we had just been on top of it. So John
just would have checked his portal.
And John's dad called the school, got him in. So everything was ready to go. Yeah, I mean, Carrie called my counselor extraordinaire and secret weapon. So she's calling and everything's getting negotiated. But then it's like, okay, yeah, well, you're accepted. But now there's no dorm. You haven't picked your classes and everybody else has. And so it's like.
It's a definitely, high pressure, a race, all the stuff you don't want. Housing is the biggest thing.
Yeah. It was crazy because he'd have to live in an apartment. So now how do you create your connections? And there's no football team. So he wasn't going to have any connections at all. So we all decided, okay, we're going to back away from that, which is how Chapman came to be.
Yes.
It ended up being a great story anyway. But there were a lot of takeaways from this because we leave it up to the students a lot of times to be responsible, take those initiatives, do those things. And sometimes they just can't, or they get bombarded with life and or activities and things that are happening that they just get behind or forget or misstep. And they don't mean to. And that's why parents are here. We're here as parents to help and guide them. And that's what college is for. Go to college, kids, because your parents are there to help if there's any missteps. And that was, I think, a lot of this story, but it all worked out in the end. And I think everybody is really happy. John's thriving. He's happy. And mom and dad have a great scholarship program there. So they have a great, I don't want to say bill, but the financial aid part ended up not being so painful.
Right. And I think when you're applying to schools, you have to keep in mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, the privates, are typically more generous than the publics. Is that true?
It is in the past. We're waiting to see how Department of Ed's going to function this year and how private schools, if they're getting FAFSA, financial aid, Pell, I think Pell's going to go away. So we're going to see how all of that breaks down. So they may be going into the loan business. They may not have as much to give because they're not getting any federal funding. So wait and see how all of that.
So how is that going to work?
We're going to wait and see. I mean, state schools are going to obviously Cal Grant's very generous, I think. And so when you have kids at UCs and Cal States, it is a great opportunity. But Cal Grant still offers for private schools, but it's only $12,000. So when you have a $70,000 bill, it gets expensive. So it'll be interesting to see how all of these break down and if they can still negotiate and if they can still have better financial options.
So are there, obviously, California has the Pell Grant. Do other states have something comparable?
So Pell Grant is federal.
Okay.
California has Cal Grant.
Got it.
Yeah.
I know just, when you look at a school like Chapman and you look at how much it is, you're like, holy cow, it's a lot of money, It's like going to USC or something. But you break it down. They're always willing to offer something as long as you have a good GPA. It doesn't have to be a 4.0. I think John has to maintain a 3.25, which I think is doable.
He's doing it, right?
Yeah. And then you've got the other stuff. So I think when you look at a tuition bill, you're kind of in sticker shock and you're like, how are we going to pay for this? But everything always seems to work out.
Yeah.
You get a little here, you get a little there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, So I just don't think families should hesitate.
Yes.
For looking at a school and be like, oh my God, that's too expensive. We can't afford it. It all works.
And it depends, because if some people like USC is very expensive, but the most expensive school right now is Pepperdine because of the dorm. You're living right on the beach.
Really?
So that's more expensive than USC. But at the end of the day, if you can't afford USC and there's a less expensive option, you want to take that less expensive option, especially if you've got 2 or 3 kids that are going to come up in that process. Sometimes it's not easy just to save $97,000 a year times 4 or potentially 5.
That's $500,000.
That's $500,000. And one thing, because my sister who are out of state, we always have this conversation, said California is so lucky. Kids here, because they can go to a junior college. There's so many different options. And then they can go to the big ticket school.
Yeah.
And go there for 2 years and spend ultimately half what they thought they would have to spend. Because we have a lot of junior colleges here and we kind of just take it for granted. But in other states, there's not as many.
Correct. And they don't necessarily have, I think it's called Proposition 99. I might not be Prop 99. It might be Prop 92, where our tuition is free for students right out of high school into community college. So the first 2 years of community college out of high school in California is free.
It's amazing.
So, I mean, we get lucky in that sense.
Yeah. And somebody told me once, it doesn't matter where you start. It only matters where you finish.
Exactly.
So I think junior college is a great option for kids.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So any other thoughts about the process? What should parents be prepared for? What was something that surprised you in this process that you weren't aware of, even though Andrew went through the process first and then John?
I think, like you said, it's, going back to senior year, it's such a slippery slope because I know you and your teams, especially Carrie, you guys are like, okay, he's got to stay on his stuff. He's got to do it. But in the situation like John, even though he's so smart and does so well, he's just not super task oriented. And so trying to keep him on top of his emails and checking the portals, that just wasn't him. And so it's so hard. If I could give any advice to parents, I mean, obviously you don't want them to slip and fall and break their neck during the process. So I think it's okay to nag a little bit. It's okay to micromanage a little bit. You have to know your child, because I would not want other kids to go through what John went through, where he did get into these schools that he wanted to get into, but he missed it because he wasn't paying attention. And that's dumb, right?
Yeah.
Dumb. I mean, he went through all the effort of applying, filling out the applications. He had a ton of friends going to these schools. He could have gone if he just would have looked at the portal. So I guess you have to know your child in this process. You really, really do. Andrew, on the other hand, was never a straight A student, but he was more on top of his stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I had a different, you have to take the right approach with each child. And that's the biggest advice I can give.
That's a great idea, because I don't mind if parents, we have Base Camp as our portal system now. And so it communicates with the student and the parents. So that way everybody's on the same page, so that little things like that don't happen. Because Carrie calls, and when John's saying, yeah, but he's not really checking, then it's like, okay, well, now mom knows. So now mom can go in and check, or dad can go in and check.
I think that's actually really, really important, because how many times did Carrie call John and John's like, yeah, I got it, and I had no clue what was happening half the time. Oh, it's really, really important.
So thank you for sharing your thoughts. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much for being here. Thank you for listening to the College Help Squad podcast. If you have a college planning or college admissions question, you can email me at cynthia@collegehelpsquad.com. Learn more about us and our services at collegehelpsquad.com. See you next time.